therapist, author, and your host of the I Don't Think We Talk Enough About podcast. Welcome back to this very special episode where I've decided to bring some topics that have really resonated on Instagram with you and start doing some more solo episodes. And today we're talking about something really deeply human, but can be incredibly hard to face, learning to see people for who they truly are and not who we wish they could be or would be. So many of you sent me messages after I popped something on my stories about this, and you shared it to your followers too. So I thought I'd open this new kind of episode with this subject. Gosh, why is this so difficult? Well, because letting go of these idealized versions of others can bring in some really difficult emotions like grief, disappointment, and even sometimes real deep loneliness. Something that really goes against our basic need as a human. We need to feel connected. Our nervous system needs other nervous systems, safe ones. As Stephen Porges, and I've talked about before, talks about with the polyvagal theory, our nervous systems thrive on co-regulation with another person. So no wonder we crave to look to someone for connection and hope they can be who we want them to be. That then creates quite a lot of idealized version of someone, especially when they're not delivering what we'd like them to be delivering. I'll come on to that more as we go through this episode. We aren't meant to do life alone, so that leaves us with that feeling of not wanting to feel lonely, holding on, clinging on to relationships that may not be good for us, but letting go of these idealized versions, which I'll hopefully be able to give you today some tips on how to do that, can be so incredibly freeing, not just for our relationships, but for our mental health too. So by the end of today's episode, I hope you'll walk away with some clarity, a sense of compassion for yourself and others too. And I'm also bringing in a visualization. I love working with visualization in my work and my practice. It's one I use all the time, and I'm going to share it today because I think you might find it useful too. So let's start with the big question. Why do we idealize people? Why do we cling so tightly to who we want them to be, even when the reality shows us time and time again otherwise? So there are several psychological theories about why we do this, which might be helpful for you to hold an awareness of. The first one I'll talk about is projection. Projection happens when we take our own unmet needs, desires, fears, wants, and we unconsciously place them onto someone else. For example, if you grew up craving stability and you didn't feel safe in your childhood, you may find yourself drawn to someone who will make you feel secure. You really hope they make you feel secure, even if they show you, like in your childhood, time and time again, that they can't deliver that. And this ties into attachment theory. So many of you I know will be aware of that. It was developed by the psychologist John Bowlby and his colleague Mary Ainsworth. And they worked on looking at our early attachments with our early caregivers and how those relationships really shape the way we connect as adults. For example, if you had an anxious attachment style, you might cling on to the idea of someone because it feels safer than the possibility of losing them. I know from my work and from the reactions on Instagram I get that will really resonate for some of you. Unfortunately, our nervous system doesn't distinguish between safety and unsafety. It craves familiarity. So it will choose unsafe over safe time and time again because it feels familiar. The good news is we can work to change this. And then there's schema theory. Schemas are the mental frameworks we use to make sense of our world. These are the stories we tell ourselves around relationships, And we build these schemas based on our past lived experiences. They take a home in our nervous system. They become our stories. And if your schema, your story tells you that a partner should act in a certain way, or a parent should act in a certain way, or a colleague should act in a certain way, you may really struggle to deviate from that expectation that your body has held on to for probably years. Ultimately, idealizing someone boils down to one thing: hope. Hope that they can meet our needs. Hope that they'll change. Hope that, and this is really sad, if we try hard enough, we'll finally feel the love, the validation, or the safety we've been longing for. But hope, as beautiful as it is, can also keep us really stuck. And feeling stuck can really further impact our mental health and our well-being as we stay in a life that just doesn't feel fulfilling and ultimately isn't meeting those unmet needs that we're so craving. But letting go of these expectations isn't easy, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is. It does take work and it is a process. It often feels like a loss, a real grief. And actually, that's what really resonated when I shared this on Instagram. So many people saying, Helen, yes, it feels like a loss. It feels like I'm grieving. And then that really ties into grief theory when we look at that anger that can come in towards ourselves for thinking someone should have been who we wanted them to be, but also towards that person, which can also be unfair because they're just being themselves. We can then go into denial. We can ignore the way they are, and that doesn't help us either. And then we work through things with the denial around maybe they'll change, and then we might move into I wish I could change so that I wasn't so needy. I didn't have this way of being with people time and time again. But sometimes it's just that person isn't the right person to meet your needs. And I'll come on to that a bit more in a second. But there's a cost to holding on to an illusion. And this taps into cognitive dissonance theory, which helps explain the discomfort we feel when our expectations don't align with reality. The tension of this not aligning with reality or not seeing the reality can lead to so much anxiety, self-doubt, lowered self-esteem and resentment, not just to the other person, but also to ourselves too. Notice how your nervous system feels when you start to think about rejecting reality. I notice my muscles tense, my breathing quickens, it feels shallower. There's this rejection feeling. I can feel it in my body. If I'm rejecting something that's real, I don't feel ease in my nervous system. But when I think about, and I love this word and I use it a lot in my work, but when we move towards acceptance of our reality, I don't know about you, but just sit with that word about acceptance. I feel myself take a deeper breath. I can actually feel my facial muscles relax. I don't feel, actually, when I was prepping this and I was thinking about that, a really strong feeling came in. When I'm not thinking about rejection and I'm not thinking about rejecting that reality of expecting something from someone, I stop feeling tricked. And I don't know why that came in, but it was a strong feeling for me. Something about not getting that authenticity or that connection. I'm no longer feeling tricked. I don't feel disillusioned. And I don't feel so out of control as such. On the flip side, letting go allows us to approach our connections with clarity, our relationships with compassion. It's not about lowering our standards. I'm not implying that at all. Or giving up on connection. It's about making space for what's real. And in that space of realness, we need to ask ourselves some really deep, reflective questions. What can we feel we can cope with? What can we continue with? And what are our limits? Some self-honesty here is crucial. So how do we actually do this? How do we actually let go of the idealized version we've created and start to accept them for who they are? I could feel myself again, a big deep breath come in when I think about accepting, letting go of the anguish. I'd like you to start with some self-reflection. What am I trying to get from this person that I might not be able to give myself? Is it love? Is it validation? Is it security? Recognizing what you're seeking can help you understand why you're holding on just so tightly. So let's just think about acceptance a bit more. A concept I love from DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, around radical acceptance. It's acknowledging reality without judgment. Doesn't mean you have to like the situation. It just means you stop fighting what is. You might say to yourself, this person isn't capable of giving me what I need right now, and that's okay. Listen to that again. This person isn't capable of giving me what I need right now, and that's okay. My book, Choose You, is out now and offers you ways to prioritise you, meet your needs, say yes to you, develop a more secure sense of self where you feel you matter, learn to set boundaries, wrap yourself in self-love, find your authentic self, and ultimately choose you in the same way you would want those you love to choose themselves too. Choose You, out now. So we're going to do one of my favourite visualisation exercises for letting go of idealisation of someone. Let's do this together. Find a comfortable place where you can sit quietly. And if it feels comfortable to do so, close your eyes. So let's take a deep breath in and then out through your mouth. And then maybe do another couple of cycles of those breaths on your own. Breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Place your feet firmly on the ground and just wiggle in your seat if you can. And just get yourself comfortable. Now I want you to picture the person you've been idealising. And I want you to picture them on a stage. And the curtains of the stage are closed behind them. And I don't know why I'm thinking they're red, but there's red velvet curtains, heavy draped curtains. And there's an audience. And this person you've idealised is stood there on the stage on their own, and everyone is watching. And they're there with everything that you've built up about them, all the wants you want from them, the expectations you've got of them. I then want you to visualise them walking back towards the curtains and going back through the curtains, out of sight. And then in the next visualisation, I want you to imagine that person coming back through those curtains, back on stage and back in front of the audience. But this time you're going to see them for who they are. You're going to see them for their strengths, their flaws. And deeply important here, I want you to see them for their humanness. What are you drawn to here? Can you make space for this new reality? Notice how it feels to let go of the idealised version. And notice how you feel seeing this person in front of you for who they truly are. It may be helpful to say here, I release my need for you to be anything other than who you are. Take a few deep breaths here. Make space for this new reality and clarity. When you're ready, open your eyes, take another cycle of breath, and imagine yourself holding this new reality for both your grief and your new clarity. How did that feel? Did you notice anything new come in? Maybe compassion for yourself, maybe some letting go, maybe some compassion for that other person. Maybe, just maybe, it may give you the closure you've been seeking. But I do understand if accepting someone for who they are actually feels too painful, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to set boundaries. Boundaries are an act of self-love, not rejection. And clarity in reality can be a real learning process in the moment for future decisions and future ways we want to be. Remember that this is a process. You don't have to have all the answers today. Maybe it's about choosing relationships that honour mutual respect, honesty and authenticity. Or maybe it's about seeing the relationship for what it really is and choosing differently. As always, this might make you laugh, but I do say it a lot. Think of relationships as a pair of shoes. One pair of shoes cannot possibly do every job. Sometimes we need a stiletto. Sometimes we need a trainer. Accepting people who we have in our lives for the things they do bring, but also accepting their limitations can be incredibly freeing. Accepting them for being a stiletto and not having the skills of a trainer, or accepting them for being a trainer and not being able to deliver what a stiletto can deliver. It can be a really helpful metaphor to use. So letting go and accepting people for who they are can be hugely beneficial for our mental health. It means we're no longer living in a state of tension, expectation, disappointment, resentment, frustration. We're free to focus on what we can control, our own healing and our own growth, looking at new ways to meet our needs, not expecting it on the other person. For your relationships, this means creating space for genuine connection. You may need to revisit some of your communication strategies, but it does help path the way for better connections. When you stop trying to mould someone into who you want them to be, you might actually be surprised by the beauty of who they really are. I think this can be a really beautiful part of growth. Seeing someone for who they are, meeting someone where they are at, in the same way we would want someone else to see us for who we truly are and to meet us where we're at. And actually that's something around the idealised version of someone, isn't it? Maybe others are looking at us in the same way. This opens space for togetherness, for growth, as opposed to resentment and frustration. But if they're not someone who you feel can fit into your life and you don't feel you can make the changes in yourself and continue in that relationship in the way you have up until now, because we do all have limits, and I think that's really important to recognise. Letting go on some relationships truly does open the door for other relationships that feel like they're more fitting. But I want to close this session today by saying idealising people is really normal. We're all guilty of it. But it can, as I've shown today, keep us trapped in these cycles that really do keep us feeling stuck. Letting go does require self-reflection. It requires radical acceptance and sometimes grief. But on the other side of this process is freedom. Freedom to love authentically, freedom to connect authentically, freedom to let people in a way that you may not have let people in before, because you will be finding new ways to meet your own needs, as opposed to having such an expectation on other people. This is deep, radical self-care. And remember, seeing people for who they truly are isn't about giving up on people. It's about giving yourself the freedom to live free of that illusion, free of that feeling I mentioned earlier, of feeling like you're being tricked. It allows you to face your reality. It allows you to live with acceptance. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much if you could follow the show, leave a quick rating, and maybe even a review to let others know what you think and whether they may enjoy the conversation too. Your support genuinely means so much. Thank you. Enjoy your day.